Hi, everyone, and welcome to our presentation today on leadership across cultures. And we're going to be focusing on the differences between and preparing you for the differences between Kenyan culture and North American culture. We're going to be specifically using the Globe CLT model and addressing servant leadership as well. Why Kenya? Why Globe CLT? I'm going to have to be honest and upfront here. I am personally connected to live Kenya, living here and also doing leadership here as well, starting my nonprofit and taking on some new roles when it comes to missional leadership and what the future of missions looks like here in Kenya. Also, it's a country of great significance to the global church, doing a fantastic job making an impact here in East Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. And also, it's becoming a huge missions hub. We'll be developing our own missions program here from our university pretty soon. I'm using the Globe Cultural Endorsed Leadership Theory because I love how it's grounded in 62 different societies, a lot of Sub-Saharan Africa, which we have a lot of similarities over here. And I think it's a really valid framework. The 6 CLT dimensions are speaking directly to things that as a manager, we need to care deeply about. The three I'm going to be focusing on are communication, motivation, and teamwork. And then finally, the framework is also going to be connected to servant leadership based out of Mark chapter 10, which will help give us a kingdom lens for understanding all of these differences. Kenya country overview. So, um, interestingly enough, Nairobi, a lot of people, when I said I'm moving to Nairobi, thought it was a country. It's not. It's a city in the country of Kenya. We're located East Africa. We are on the coast. Um, having the Indian Ocean. Our neighbors include Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, and also Somalia. Already told you about Nairobi. It's my favorite little fun fact for people. Many international organizations and NGOs are headquartered here. We have over 40 distinct ethnic groups: Kikuyu, Luau, Kamba. Maasai is probably the most commonly known. The national language is Swahili, but everyone's also educated in English, so there tends to be a basic understanding in English, and both are widely used. Um, Religiously, Kenya is a majority Christian nation with approximately 85% of the population identifying as Christian, which will be really important for a discussion, but they will say they are 80% Christian and 100% corrupt. So I also want to keep that in the back of the mind. Kenyans are saying that as we discuss this and just aware of kind of what they're struggling with. The cultural concept, Ubuntu, I am because we are, is a useful touchstone. It captures the communal orientation that shapes how Kenyans approach leadership for a community. Teamwork and decision making. As managers, recognize this communal worldview is the first step toward effective cross-cultural engagement. An economy, East Africa's largest economy is in Kenya, growing huge in tech. Our M-Pesa is a really, really big thing, kind of like it's a better version of the American Venmo, PayPal, Apple Pay. All of it is in one app, M-Pesa. They did a great job. Also huge, huge in tourism, agriculture, and finance is growing as well. So the Globe CLT framework, before comparing the US and Kenya, we're going to briefly orient ourselves to the framework so we have the right mindset. The Globe's cultural endorsed leadership theory organizes leadership expectations into 6 global dimensions. You have the charismatic and value-based, the team-oriented, participative, human-oriented, autonomous, and self-protective. A key finding from Globe's Phase 3 research is that leaders who behave according to their culture's expectations are the most effective. So we want to go with the culture, not against the culture. So it's not about what one's universally best. It's about the best fit for the leader's behavior and the culture's prototype of the ideal leader. We want to go with momentum. So the charismatic value-based leadership is universally valued across cultures. Participative, leadership by contrast is much more culturally contingent. Um, which looks what looks empowering in the US might feel unsettling in a culture with a higher power distance. We'll come back to this contrast with Kenya a little later on, to be continued. Keep these six dimensions in mind as we move into the different comparisons. Oops, excuse me. So CLT scores specific to the United States versus Kenya or Sub-Saharan Africa. Um, this chart is going to be comparing the two in each of the six CLT clusters. Charismatic and value-based, both cultures score high. The US slightly higher at 6.2 versus Kenya at 5.76. This is consistent with Globe's findings that this dimension is universally valued. Visionary principled leaders are admired in both contexts. Team-oriented, Kenya actually scores slightly higher, 5.87 versus 5.77. I honestly was surprised Kenya didn't score much higher than the US. This reflects the communal Ubuntu orientation. Building unity and loyalty within the group is really central to Kenyan leadership expectations. We all succeed together. Right. Participative, there we go next, is the biggest gap. The US scores 5.93 versus Kenya at 4.52. American managers are expected to involve their subordinates in decision-making and delegate authority. In Kenya, hierarchy is more respected, and a leader who defers too much may be seen as weak or indecisive. So that's been really interesting for me to navigate with my students in Impact Health and trying to set a very different mindset from the beginning. So we're moving together, we're going together. Your voice is really, really important, and it's been pretty difficult to navigate. The humane oriented, Kenya scores 5.64 versus America at 5.21. Leaders are expected to show genuine care, compassion, and generosity toward those that they lead. Autonomous, both cultures are relatively low, with US slightly higher. And self-protective, Kenya scores slightly higher at 3.83 versus 3.16, reflecting greater attention to hierarchy, status, and procedural norms in organizational settings. There are a lot of procedures, a lot of greetings, a lot of things you have to do at the beginning of your meetings that I have been taking notes on so I don't offend anyone as I go. Communication across the cultures. So communication style is one of the most immediately practical differences managers are going to notice. Like, in the United States, communication is usually pretty direct and explicit. I'm from California, so we don't even need to greet. I just need to let you know what I need. People say what they mean, and open to debate is seen as a sign of engagement and intelligence. Like, hey, I'm going to say my opinion, you say yours, and we can kindly hash it out. The high participative CLT score means employees expect to have their voices heard and input valued. In Kenya, communication is far more relational and context dependent. What is left unsaid can be as important as what is spoken. And a Kenyan employee who disagrees with a superior may signal that disagreement through silence, a change in body language, or carefully and direct language. Never an open challenge. We never speak openly in any situation. You come back and say it later, or you may never have an opportunity to say it. So a lot of people will agree to do something, and then they just will never follow through if they think it's a bad idea, but they still won't say it to your face. The lower participative CLT score 4.52 also means that leaders who are expected to lead with confidence and authority, a manager who is constantly asking the team for direction may seem lacking confidence. The practical takeaway for managers is to invest in relational time before task time. In Kenya, trust is built through personal connection. So every time you see someone, you always start with a hello, how are you? Tell me about, your day, but not getting too personal because that can also make them uncomfortable. Okay. So what drives people? So motivation is the fuel of organizational performance, and it looks different across the two cultures. Both cultures respond to charismatic, value-based leaders who are really moving toward vision. The participative gap is significant for motivation. American employees are motivated by ownership. Give them autonomy. Co-authorship of goals. And then in Kenya, a leader who provides clear, confident direction is what's motivating. Ambiguity or excessive delegation may create anxiety rather than empowerment. Sorry about the rooster. The humane-oriented dimension is where Kenyan expectations really stand out. A leader who knows their employees as a whole, their families, their struggles, their aspirations, build kinds of loyalty and engagement that formal incentive structures can't buy as much here. Okay. Teamwork and how the groups are working together. So the radar chart on the left gives you a visual overview of all 6 CLT dimensions at once. You can see where the US and Kenya converge and where they diverge, right? The most important teamwork observations, the team-oriented scores are similar, but team dynamics look different in Kenya. Team loyalty is relational and personal. People follow a leader they trust as a person, not just as a function. Building that trust takes time, but it produces extraordinary commitment from a Kenyan. Hierarchy matters a lot. Don't set up flat structures or encourage subordinates to challenge colleagues publicly in a Kenyan team. It's going to backfire. The leader should set direction clearly and decisively. Conflict is handled indirectly. You don't directly nope, does not work here in Kenya. If tension arises, a respected third-party person is often the right mediator, and doing it in private is always very helpful. It can be very shameful to be corrected in public, and we need to celebrate together. Communal success rituals, shared meals, group prayer, public acknowledgement, and a community setting are far more meaningful than individual rewards. Okay, they're gonna stop soon. Okay, servant leadership, the cross-cultural bridge. Servant leadership is the bridge between cultural analysis and practical wisdom, and between management theory and biblical ethics, because I'm a Christian before I'm a manager, right? I'm a Christian before I'm a nonprofit leader. So Militold and Dorfman in 2012 found that all 5 dimensions of servant leadership, egalitarianism, moral integrity, empowering, empathy, and humility, were rated as important for effective leadership across every globe culture cluster. No culture said these things don't matter, but cultures vary in how they express them and the level as well. So empathy and humility, Kenyans' humane-oriented CLT scores reflect that a culture that expects leaders to genuinely feel for the people they lead. Humility is not a weakness, but the confident absence of arrogance is deeply admired. Proverbs 11:2 speaks directly here. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. I love that. But with humility comes wisdom. Amen, amen. Egalitarianism. The US scores very high on gender egalitarianism. Kenya is more traditional, very traditional, but it is changing. We see it more in Nairobi's culture. Sometimes we bump into it the more rural we get. And so that can actually be a pretty stark contrast depending on where you are. And that's as a female American living in Kenya, it's hard to navigate. And I think it's even harder for Kenyan women as well. Okay, empowering also is going to look different. In the US, it means giving people authority. In Kenya, it often means investing in people's development so they can grow in a greater capacity within a relational framework. When I first started Impact, I tried to give responsibilities that were manageable to my students, and I realized that just really overwhelmed them. So we had to start with just developing them, and then they see the opportunity, and then they were able to approach it much better. So I've bumped into that one personally as well. Okay, a Christian biblical perspective. So the Christian faith provides not just comfort, but practical wisdom. Thank you, Lord, for cross-cultural leaders. So Mark 10:43 through 45 is the cornerstone of servant leadership theory. And it was cited by Mittal and Dorfman 2012 in their foundational study. Jesus's model of servant leadership transcends culture. I love that because it speaks to the deepest human longings to be seen, to be valued, and to be led with integrity. Also, there's Galatians 3:28, powerful corrective to cultural arrogance. It affirms that cultural differences are real and worth understanding. but that every person carries inherent dignity before God. So I think that's really important for us as Americans, as we approach Kenyans, to not have a sense or a posture of superiority or any arrogance in how we do things, and we might think that we're doing them better. Romans 12:10, honor one another above yourselves, speak to the team-oriented and human-oriented dimensions. Both cultures understand this call. Though we have already talked about it, we're expressing it differently. It's through honor in Kenya is expressed through hospitality and relational investment. In the US, it often takes form of recognition and allowing their voice to be heard. Proverbs 11:2 is perhaps the most practical word for an American manager entering a Kenyan context. With humility comes wisdom. Come to learn, not just to lead. Come with questions, more questions than you come with answers. The manager who embodies that posture is going to have a lot more trust from their team, effectiveness, and be able to produce better results. Start slowly. Here in Kenya, we say pole pole, like you start slowly, slowly, and it's been very helpful. Oops, excuse me. Practical takeaways. Let's bring the research all back together. So, 6 practical things for us as managers to make a commitment to. First, invest in the relationship before the task. Always, always, always care about the person more than what they're doing, right? You can't rush this. A US manager who skips this is going to struggle to get honest feedback, and a Kenyan one is going to struggle to get any results. Second, lead with vision and values. Both cultures endorse charismatic, value-based leadership at the top of the scale. You don't have to choose between being inspirational and professionalism. Let's do both. Third, adjust your participative style. This is the single biggest thing that we need to shift from an American perspective. Consult in private, decide with confidence. Okay. Fourth, show humane care. This is not soft. It is the biggest ROI, return on your investment, positive investment you can make in Kenyan team. People follow leaders. They care about them as human beings more than just workhorses. Fifth, always lead with integrity. That's something that's really important here and not always seen. So when you lead integriously in all areas of leadership, it's deeply important to the culture here. Sixth, be a learner. The posture of humility is not weakness, it is wisdom. We already read that. So make sure that you are applying that as well. Oops, sorry. Concluding, leading across the differences. So as we close, I want to leave you with this thought. The research from Globe shows us that the United States and Kenya are more alike than they are different. Isn't that beautiful? When it comes to leadership, values, and just life. Both cultures want leaders who are visionary, principled, and invested in their team. The differences in participation style, relational expectations, and how hierarchy operates are real and significant, but they are very learnable. If I can learn it, anyone can learn it. So the deeper framework here is the servant leadership model. That Mittal and Dorfman research confirms that serving others with empathy, humility, and moral integrity is recognized and as effective in every culture. And the Globe CLT model also shows that. This is not a coincidence. It reflects something about human dignity and what we all long for from our leaders. And for those of us who lead as from a Christian worldview, this is not just research. It is truly a calling. John 1:14 tells us that Jesus, the ultimate leader, became flesh and dwelt among us. He crossed the ultimate cultural divide to serve. Can you imagine? And understand and to redeem. That is the model. We may go and do likewise. Thank you so much.